Welcome to the Sellernomics podcast, where we share valuable tips and information in the Amazon and e-commerce space. Each week, we deliver the best interviews with some of the top Amazon personalities in the industry to help you grow your business. Today's episode is brought to you by Getida, the global leader in FBA auditing and reimbursements. Get $400 in free FBA reimbursements at Getida.com/Sellernomics. And now, here are your hosts, Rob Stanley and Lisa Kinski.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to today's episode of Sellernomics. My name is Lisa Kinski, and I'm joined by my co-host, Rob Stanley. And today we have with us a longtime friend. He hasn't been on the show in a hot minute, but we are very excited to have on with us Matt Remuzzi with CapForge, Bookkeeping and Tax. And we're going to be talking about how to elevate your Amazon business for profitability. I always love talking to Matt because he is one of the few I feel like one of the few bookkeeping service providers that understands more than just his lane of the Amazon business. He is so plugged in. And so I'm very excited for this conversation today. We really hope that you guys enjoy it. Please welcome Matt to the stage. Matt, how are you?
Good. Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Good to see you guys again.
Of course. So good to see you again, too. So, Matt, let's just start with the very beginning. We're talking about elevating Amazon businesses for profitability. And this is a time in our economy and just in the world where profits are hard to, they're being squeezed, right? And so the first question is, how does a business know if they're actually making money or if they're just treading water?
Yeah, I mean, that's really kind of the first question, right? And it comes down to the stuff we do. The bookkeeping accounting piece is really how you're going to know if all those products you sold and the checks you got from Amazon and the checks they get from you guys are adding up to, hey, this makes sense. Let's keep doing it. Or, you know what? We're selling, but we're just barely making it. Or, every time we sell a product, we lose money. We got to turn this around. Without that data, without doing the accounting and really figuring it out, it's very hard to know. And there's tools out there, not throwing anybody under the bus, but something like Sellerboard or Helium 10 has similar product. They kind of give you a ballpark, right? Okay, you buy it for $5, you sell it for $25. How could you not be making money, right? But those tools don't take everything into account and they don't really add it all up. So at the end of the day, you're still not sure. And sometimes they're even kind of giving you a false sense of security. Well, again, if I'm buying it for a third of what I'm selling it for, how could I not be making money? But trust me, it's possible. And you don't want to go in, 6 months, 12 months of work and effort and money spent and then find out it's not working. So you really got to have your bookkeeping and accounting in order, accurate, done right, done every month to make sure that all that hard work is paying off.
Yeah, absolutely, Matt. And you guys have seen or the team over there at CapForge have seen lots of books. And I'm sure that there's probably something that first place you look that you're just like, I know this is going to be the spot that almost every seller makes a mistake or has an issue or something's not right. Why don't we let people know a little more specific, like what they should maybe look at? Because the reality is, even before you come to CapForge, you need to get really everything together before you hand it to them. I'm going to be a little biased because my former company used CapForge, and I absolutely love them. But what should people kind of maybe look at just to, if they are getting ready to come to CapForge and they want to prep everything, what's one of the things you guys are commonly see that they should take a look at first?
Yeah, I mean, the single biggest thing that really kind of swings between we're doing pretty well, we're making money, and gosh, we got to fix something because we're not, is getting that cost of goods sold figured out. That is one of the biggest expenses that the business is going to have. It is hard to figure out because you could buy your products 3 months, 4 months, even 6 months before you finally sell it. Then you sell it, you don't get paid for another 2 weeks. And in between there, you might have started out, you bought 1,000, but they only shipped 990. And then Amazon lost some. And then some got returned. And some of those returns you could resell. And some of them were damaged and you couldn't resell. So when you just, do that simple math, okay, I bought 1,000, they cost me $10 a piece. If I sell all of them, I should have, sell them for $30 a piece. But it never works out like that, because all along the way, things are chipping away at those costs. And maybe you forgot to factor in shipping, and then you had to do some air shipping to not run out of stock. And then you had returns, then you did discounts and promos. So the single best thing you could do as far as getting prepped and getting ready to figure out where you stand on that is really drill down into what that cost of goods sold is and all those different expense pieces that go into it. And that's something, again, we can help you with it. You don't have to try to figure it all out, do all that math, do your own Excel spreadsheets to figure it out. But just know that's the number one place where we're likely to find out that you thought your cost was a lot lower than it really is, right? It's pretty easy to run the Amazon reports or whatever platforms you sell on and see, okay, this is how much I did in sales, and this is how much they're holding back, and this is how much I'm going to get. That's pretty black and white. But how much did that actually cost me to sell that product? That's a much harder one to put your hands around and really understand. And that's where we can help with. But really, that's the piece. That and ad spend, are the two biggest levers that tell you whether or not you're going to make money, you're going to break even, or you're going to end up, in the red.
Yeah, I feel like even in just the few factors that you had mentioned that go into your cost of goods sold, it's enough to make your head spin, right? And I feel like sometimes, a seller may take that expense of the having to, airship product last minute because they had a bump in sales and just write it off as an anomaly and be like, oh, that was just a blip that one time, right? It won't hit us that hard. And no, at the end of the day, it's really going to impact that bottom line. So you just mentioned ad spend. Talk to us a little bit about that and why it's one of the top factors that's going to be kind of an indicator of whether or not the business will make it kind of sink or swim and being one of the largest expenses.
Well, it's interesting because if you've been doing this for a while, like we have, in the early days, Amazon was like a game of musical chairs, but there was almost enough chairs for everybody. Everybody could sit down. In other words, you could just use the right keywords and you'd pop up in the search results and you'd get sales. But now Amazon's like a game of musical chairs where there's 100 people waiting for like 12 chairs. So the only way to get a chair is to pony up money, which is your ad spend. And when you're first launching a product, nobody's ever heard of you, to get one of those chairs, you've got to spend a lot. And even then, even after time goes by, there's always more people hungry for those spots. They're willing to pay and lose money on the front end to try and get, traction and reviews. So it's an easy place to, overspend, to bid on keywords that aren't getting you the results you want or aren't really targeting the right audience. You're getting a lot of clicks maybe, but not a lot of sales, or, whatever the case. It's easy to spend a lot more there when not that long ago, the amount that people used to spend there was zero. Or close to zero. And all the money they're not spending on ads was going into their bottom line as profits. Now, in order to just stay competitive, a lot of times you have to spend a good amount on ads. And so it's something you have to keep a very close eye on and make sure that all of the ads you're running are pulling their weight, and know that when you're experimenting with new things, you've got to have a budget and watch it like a hawk and, pull stuff that's not working and only reinvest in stuff that really has proven that, it's a positive return on investment. And I talk to people all the time and go, oh, I know you got to spend money to make money. I'm like, oh, yes, but you don't want to lose money to make, like, that doesn't work. So know where that limit is. And I get it. None of this stuff is sexy. There's no fun in watching, your money and watching the budget and everything. It's much more fun to come up with cool ads and creative and brands and logos and colors. Like, that's the fun part. But profits are sexy. And the only way you ensure that you have that sexy part of the business is to really be very data focused and very numbers focused on this business. Otherwise, it's just too competitive. There's just not enough seats in that musical chairs game to just count on getting lucky and, playing a gut instinct and whatever to get you a chair at the table. It's just, you got to know your numbers.
Yeah. Absolutely. You have to know your numbers. And I'm glad you talked a bit about the ad spend. And I'm sure this is something that maybe people come to you to get their books done to possibly look at, like getting borrowing money or looking at expanding, whether it's into ad spend or ads. And when is kind of the right time, or what have you seen when it comes to kind of borrowing funds for your business? When should people consider borrowing? What's like the kind of right time that you've seen, at least from looking at books all the time?
Yeah, I mean, what my general advice for borrowing money is, if you're looking to borrow to be able to buy more inventory of a proven product, that the only thing holding you back from selling more of it is literally having more of that product. And you know that every time you sell it, you're making a 20% or 25% profit or something. And then you look at, okay, how much is it going to cost me to borrow money to buy more of this? And now that's going to become an expense. But even after that expense, I'm still going to be profitable and I can sell more volume at a profit. That's a good time to say, okay, it makes sense to borrow money, because I know for every dollar I borrow, I'm going to make $1.50 back or $2 back. That makes sense. If you're borrowing money for anything else, to try out new inventory, to try out a new ad campaign, or anything else that you're not sure how it's going to work out, don't do it, because you're going to borrow the money, then the money's going to be gone, and you're going to owe the money plus interest, and you have no idea if even $1 is going to come back from that effort, or half of what you borrowed, or who knows. But if there's any guessing in that, just assume it's not going to work out, and then you're going to owe money. You're going to have to take money out of whatever is working and put it into filling this hole in the thing that you tried that isn't working. So my strong suggestion is, don't borrow unless it's basically a sure thing. If you know that you can sell it and make money, right, then it makes sense. But if there's any doubt in your mind, or any part of that is sort of a guess as to I think, or I hope, or I wish, don't do it. You're going to end up, more than like, yes, it could pay off, right? But so could the lottery, right?
Sure.
but if you're not 100% sure, don't commit to borrowing money. Don't play with borrowed money, right? You can, if your business is profitable and you're making good money and you want to try investing some of those profits in another product line or some, new ad campaign, then sure, though, you're only losing house money at that point. But don't borrow money to speculate. It's just never ends well.
Of the accounts that you have seen, Matt, historically, what percentage of sellers would you say are correct in their assumption that if I sell more of this product, it will only be positive? Like, how many sellers really know their books and can make those decisions accurately, correctly, to be able to turn a loan into profit as opposed to digging the hole deeper?
I mean, I would say there are definitely people out there who really get what they're doing. They really understand the market they're in, and they really, especially on the wholesale side, they really understand that it's when you buy it that you lock in the profit, not when you sell it, right? If you know you can buy it for $3 and sell it for $4, then great. Buy as many as you can for $3 if you know you can sell them all at $4. But a lot of times, especially the newer sellers and the private label folks who are trying to come up with some new spin on something and put their own stamp on, or maybe it's not even new, they're just literally putting their own brand on somebody else's existing product. I think those are the guys that end up more often than not sort of disappointed with how it turns out, because there's nothing different about what they're selling, or not different enough to really drive much interest. So I would say, I mean, of our clients, hopefully more than half understand where they're at and are making good decisions, and we're trying to educate the rest of them. But of the wholesaler population, or the whole population of all the sellers out there, I think it's an alarmingly low number that really understand the math. There's so many YouTube videos and TikToks and everything else out there that go, oh, hey, you want an easy side hustle? Here's how you do it. Go over to Alibaba, find a product, turn around, sell it on Amazon or eBay, and look at the big spread you can make, and all that's profit. Oh gosh, if it was that easy, right? We'd all be retired already. It's not that easy. And there's a lot more to it, and there's a lot of challenge, and it's not something to pick up and think you're going to do as a side hustle 10 minutes a day. It's a serious business that requires your full attention, And, if you're not treating it that way, it's just much less likely you're going to have the success you're hoping for.
Yeah. Wow. We are going to take a very quick break and hear a message from our sponsor, but we'll be back in just a second and jump straight back into the conversation.
Be the next Amazon success story with Getida's FBA refund recovery service. We're offering Sellernomics listeners $400 in free FBA reimbursements to get started. Let us help you maximize your Amazon profits. With Getida, your Amazon business is in good hands.
All right, y'all, be sure to head over to getida.com/Sellernomics to get that first 400 in FBA reimbursements free. We are back with Matt. And like, a Prince just mentioned in our quick little message from our sponsor, you can really be a success story on Amazon, but there is an element of refunds and reimbursements that goes into a business. And part of what would trigger those refunds and reimbursements is customer returns. And at the time of recording, we're about 6 weeks out from the start of Q4, which means tons and tons of ordering, tons and tons of sales, and then probably tons and tons of returns right after the holiday season. So what role do returns play in the profitability of an Amazon business from your perspective?
It can be a huge negative. It really depends on the nature of the return. So if somebody buys your product, opens it up, destroys the packaging, potentially messes the product up to the point where you can't easily resell it, and then sends it back and wants a refund, not only have you lost the sale, but you lost the value of that product. And if you're working with, again, not the greatest margins, it only takes a handful of returns to really wipe out a huge amount of sales. If you're in the position where the product you sell is pretty indestructible, or maybe it's the kind of thing where, people can immediately tell, I ordered it in red, white, and blue, and I really like the red, I don't want the white or blue, I'm sending them back basically untouched, unopened, and they can be resold again. It's not going to be as painful. You've still lost the sale, but you haven't lost the product, and you can, still resell them, assuming that demand is there still for those colors or variations or whatever. So a lot of how painful or impactful returns has to do with what kind of product you're selling and whether or not you lose the value of that product when it gets returned, or whether or not you have the opportunity, to resell it, or how often it sort of splits one way or the other for that. But what is bad is when people aren't, taking into account the number of returns they might get, and understanding that added burden that those returns create in having to sell more products to make up for those returns, or if they're damaged returns or unsellable returns, how many more sales on top of that you have to cover the lost value of sales that get returned, and you've lost the product cost as well. So it depends on the nature of the product you're selling and how those returns go down, but it can be very impactful. That's one of those areas where, like in electronics, small electronics, people can lose so much money because people open them just enough to make them unsellable or damaged, or they get angry, they leave a bad review on top of sending it back, and 5 or 10% of those returns can literally wipe out all the profits from all the rest of the sales that you had. So you have to understand your product and do the best you can to not have those returns come back if you can avoid it, or if they are returned, then at least hopefully they're resellable returns and not damaged or 1-star returns on top of that. That really can just be the end of an otherwise okay business.
That goes right to your bottom line. It absolutely hurts you. Let's stay with the Q4 coming up here. Let's talk a little bit about like financial forecasting and maybe what that can do to your Q4, having a good financial forecast ready to go and understanding it. How does that affect like a Q4 going into a Q4, having your books in order and your financial forecasting done?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. This is the time of year where a lot of people are making or breaking their whole year's sales and profits, is whatever happens in Q4. And obviously it's a challenge, right? Because on the one hand, if you understock and you run out early, you've not only lost opportunity for more revenue and more profits, but now you potentially hurt your rankings for the future and, made everything in your life harder. And on the other hand, if you way overstock, right, even if you sell a decent amount, if you end up with tons of inventory left at the end of the year unsold, then you've really cut into the profits there. You haven't recovered and sold through as much as you can. So even though the sales you had may have been profitable, net, you're still underwater because you were hoping to sell a lot more. So it really is key to understand what, and it's a forecast for sure. It's your best guess, but the better you understand your own numbers, where you're coming from, what you can afford to buy ahead in stock, and how likely you are to hit those projections, the more likely you end up in that sweet spot where you buy a lot ahead, but you manage to sell through nearly all of it. You don't stock out, but sell through nearly all of it. And that's where you see the maximum number of profit realized for your business. So going into it blind and guessing, or just using some kind of rule of thumb, well, okay, if my Q3 sales were X, then my Q4 must be 3X. Not necessarily, right? You really need to know who you're selling to and how likely you are to have that boost, and you're going to be much better off for it. The more it's just a wild guess, the less likely you are to hit it.
Yeah. And what about then after Q4 kind of concludes, right? I would imagine the majority of returns are going to come in during January. So when financially should sellers be really assessing the overall success of Q4? Because it's sounding more like you've kind of got to let the dust settle, order maybe a little more inventory to backfill for whatever you sold out, see how many returns come in, what is actually resellable. So you probably can't even assess Q4 success until February, March.
Yeah, I mean, you really do kind of have to wait at least through the end of January to see what's going to happen, right? Don't take that December 29th number and go, oh, okay, I'm going to go buy a mansion and a yacht and a sports car. And then in January, you lose it all back, right? Well, guess I'm back to the Honda Civic and the 1-bedroom studio. And, so yes, you have to not only see what happens in December and November, but also what happens in January, and sometimes even into February with those, returns and refunds and everything else, to see where you really ended. And hopefully, again, you forecast not only the sales that you have in Q4, but the percentage of those sales that do end up in refunds, and you're not shocked when whatever that number is comes back and you give back whatever portion of sales went that way. Hopefully you're forecasting the whole picture, not just the top line. But yeah, you really, at the end of December is not the end of the story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And Matt, I'm going to give this question a little bit more on we're going to transition a little bit into CapForge, but also a good question for our sellers to understand. And that is, what kind of thing or item should they be getting together before they come to CapForge if they're looking to exit their business? So what kind of things should they prep to basically have ready to come to you guys to kind of figure out the books so they hopefully have a nice profitable exit?
Yeah, I mean, I always tell people, when you're thinking about selling the business, it's just the same as when you're thinking about selling your house. If you've been in that situation, right? You want to go through, if you're selling your house, and touch up all those spots of paint that were chipped, or, the scrapes on the floor, or the squeaky hinge, or the broken screen. You want to make it look as good as you can. So it's the same thing with the business. Cancel those software subscriptions you're not using anymore. Get rid of that unsellable inventory. Let go of that VA that you're not using anymore, but still paying for every month or whatever. Get things as tight and as neat and as organized as you can. And ideally, before you're selling, you want to be on an uptrend and growth. You want to be able to show month over month increases in revenue, and you want to have solid profitability, and you want to have all your books and accounting in order, so you can show a buyer, hey, look, not only have we, are we running a lean and mean operation, but it's profitable, and here's the proof. That's going to get you the highest price when you're ready to exit. So getting those things in order, cleaning up, anything that you're not using anymore, old inventory, that stuff you were always meaning to liquidate on eBay but haven't gotten around to, Get all that stuff out of the way before you go to market, because those are the things that are going to trip up the buyer. Even though it seems kind of trivial and not important, buyers get hung up on that stuff. What they want to see is something that it looks like it's going to be super easy for them to take over and just continue the success that you're already showing, rather than, oh, wow, there's all this work and all these extra things I have to do. And why do you even have that inventory? Why are you still paying that marketing agency? They haven't done anything for you in 6 months. So clean house effectively on the business, Get it down to its leanest, meanest, most profitable iteration. And then, by the way, even if you don't end up selling for a while, that's still the place you want to be, lean and mean and profitable. That's going to be your best bet, regardless of whether you sell in a month from now or a year from now. That's really the best way to run the business all the time anyway.
Yeah, 100%. And I think prepping your business for sale is its own podcast episode, right? So we won't dive any further into that.
I appreciate the high level though.
Yes, absolutely. But just as we begin to round out the episode, Matt, we talked about a couple of key elements, but just to give a quick little summary, what are the perspectives of an Amazon business from a, bookkeeping and taxes kind of perspective that sellers need to have tidied up to be as profitable as possible? Let's give them a couple of bullet points.
Yeah, so I think the number one place to start is looking at all of the products you sell. So SKU by SKU, and making sure that each one is profitable and pulling its weight. And if it's not, then you have a quick decision to make. Either we stop selling it, we change the pricing, we change the price that it costs us, our sourcing, our cost, or we mess around with the ads, right? So either fix it so it's profitable and give yourself a short time horizon for that, like 30 days, right? Or else decide to get rid of it. So don't keep selling SKUs that aren't pulling their weight, that aren't profitable on their own. Then look at, again, your overall cost of goods sold. Have we done everything we can to make that as low as possible? Have we looked at, different sourcing options, different packaging options, different, should we bundle it differently? Do we need to include the extra gizmos and screws and latches and whatever things that we include, or does it need to come in 5 different colors? Get all that tightened up as much as you can to get your cost of goods sold as low as possible. And then do the same thing with your ad spend. Is every ad, every keyword, every dollar we're spending on clicks pulling its weight? If it's not, why are we still doing it? Do we need to change it? Do we need to drop it? Whatever it is, we want to get that ad spend as tight as we can. So SKU by SKU profitability, cost of goods sold, and ad spend. Those are the things you have absolute control over. Everything else, obviously, Amazon fees for the most part, it is what it is. We can't do much about that. And some of the other costs of running a business, you have to have insurance and you have to do other things. But the cost of goods sold, the ad spend, and the per SKU decision making, that's what you have control over. That directly impacts your bottom line. That's what you should really stay focused on month after month after month to make sure your business stays where you want it to be, which is, again, lean and mean and profitable.
I love that. That is a great wrap up. And thank you for giving the perspective too of like either fix it or chuck it in about 30 days. That is a quick decision time, because I think sometimes folks will say, oh, well, maybe we didn't give it, the new ad enough time to perform, or this color, we just need, we did pastels, so we need to wait for spring and it's the middle of December. Like, change it. If it's not fixing, cut the loss, get out from underneath that. So Matt, it is very clear, obviously to us and hopefully to the listeners, that you know what you're talking about. So tell us more about CapForge, who specifically it is that you guys help, how you help, and then how they can get in touch.
Yeah, definitely. So we work with e-com sellers of all stripes. A lot of our sellers are Amazon predominantly or exclusively, but we do have a lot of multi-channel sellers and some that are direct to consumer or, strictly wholesale or what have you. But if you're selling online in any way, shape, or form, we're happy to talk to you. We work with sellers of all sizes too. If you're just kind of launching your first product, all the way up to, 8-figure sellers, we work with all sizes. And the best way to find out more about us is just check out the website, capforge.com. It has our pricing, it has our services, it has a whole bunch of information about me and the team, and lots of events I've done like this, different podcasts, different YouTube videos and things. So if you want to hear more of me blathering on, Can't imagine why, but you got lots of options if you do. And then, if what we've got on there is of any interest, please, feel free to reach out via email, use the contact form on the website, or even, old-fashioned telephone works too. Give us a call. We always do a free review and consultation. Actually, I'm thinking about taking your guys' idea and offering, $500. If you've got a set of books and I can't find a single thing wrong with it, I'll give you $500. I venture to say I won't have to pay out for years.
But I think you're right. But that's a very attractive offer, and that is a great opportunity for people to say oh, I know my stuff's good, and then you are able to help them.
That's an exclusive. Wait, that's an exclusive here on Sellernomics. Reach out to Matt and try to get that $500 from him. So,
tell you what, if you reference this podcast and you take me up on that offer, I'll put my money where my mouth is. Absolutely. You want me to take a look at what you've got, and if I literally can't find anything that's wrong with it or isn't done the way it should be done, then you took $500 from me. But I'm pretty confident that I'm not going to have to pay out very often. So we'll see what happens.
Well, you guys heard him. So again, if you want to get in touch with Matt and his team, you can send an email to info@capforge.com, CAPFORGE.com, or you can just check out their website at capforge.com. But yes, it is a very exciting exclusive offer. Thank you, Matt. That was very on the fly, but super, super awesome. Anything else that you want to leave the listeners with before we close out today's episode?
No, again, I think, it's easy to put this at the bottom of the to-do list, right? If you skip the bookkeeping today, nothing bad happens. No big gray cloud comes and rains on you. No lightning bolt strikes you dead. But then you skip it tomorrow, and then the day after, the day after, day after. And then pretty soon it's like this giant weight on your shoulders. You got to do it. But now it seems like this giant overwhelming thing, and you don't want to do it even less than you wanted to do it before, which before it was sort of hand in hand with go to the dentist or do the bookkeeping. I get it. I get all that. But it's super important and super helpful to make sure that your business is paying you back for all the time and blood, sweat, and tears that you're putting into it. So please, you don't have to come and do it with me, but do it somewhere with somebody who knows what they're doing, just to give yourself the best fighting chance of having a really successful business. I think it's super important. So that's my one tip, is don't ignore it like that sore tooth. Take care of it now, and it will pay dividends if you have it done right and really use it for all it's worth.
And we totally agree. Awesome note to end on. Matt, thank you so much for hopping on with us today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Great to see you again.
Good to see you too. And thank you so much for everyone who tuned in today. If you liked what you saw, please be sure to give us a thumbs up, share your thoughts with us in the comments, subscribe to the show, and we will see you all on the next one.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Sellernomics podcast. Special thanks to our sponsor, Getida. Did you know that Amazon probably owes you money for FBA reimbursements? Get $400 in free FBA reimbursements at Getida.com/Sellernomics. Be sure to join us again next week for more great tips on how to grow your business. And thanks again for listening.